Hello, everybody. Welcome to our E for B podcast.
Yes, welcome.
So I want you to imagine picking up a massive, just an 800-page book right now.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Does your heart rate go up just a little bit? Like, do you feel a genuine creeping sense of dread at the thought of all those thin little pages?
Oh, absolutely. I think most people do, honestly.
Right. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into a really singular, fascinating source.
Mm-hmm.
A past titled Aprenda a Gustar de Literatura.
Which translates to learn to love literature.
Exactly, from the English for Brazilians channel.
Yeah.
And our mission for this deep dive is basically to cure that modern book anxiety.
That is a very tall order.
It is, but we're going to explore how to transition from seeing reading as this, mandatory chore or race against time.
Right.
And turn it into experiencing it as a profound art form that actually builds empathy and, well, happiness.
It's an incredibly timely mission. I mean, especially right now. Yeah, because in our fast-paced world of just constant information overload, so many of us have lost the fundamental thread when it comes to books.
Oh, for sure. We all have that towering stack of unread novels on the nightstand.
A guilt stack.
The guilt stack, yes.
Yeah.
And instead of anticipating the joy of diving into them, we view them as like monuments to our own procrastination.
Exactly. Because the modern world demands relentless speed, but literature inherently demands presence. It asks you to slow down.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source draws a really stark line in the sand right from the beginning.
It really does.
It pulls reading completely out of the casual hobby or data acquisition category.
Right, it elevates it.
Elevates it strictly to an art form. It defines literature as the art of using written language with aesthetics, beauty, and sophistication to inspire knowledge, good feelings, and provide genuine company.
It's almost like a deliberate transfer of aesthetic energy from the author to the reader.
An energy transfer.
Yeah, I mean, that framing changes everything. When we read a quick text message or, scan a news report, we are merely exchanging utilitarian data.
Right, just getting the fact.
Exactly. But when a text is crafted with genuine literary inspiration, the author is actually transferring their aesthetic vision and their emotional state directly into your consciousness.
Wow.
The letters themselves radiate an energy. But to receive that energy, you have to be properly tuned to the frequency.
Which is hard when we're so distracted.
Right. And that brings up the massive barrier the guide criticizes, which is our frantic survival mode culture.
Yeah, that survival mode has birthed this entire industry of speed reading.
Oh, gosh.
You see these courses constantly promoted online, promising to teach you how to devour a book a day or 1,000 books a year.
Like it's a competitive sport.
Exactly. It is a system where pure, raw quantity overtakes any sense of quality.
Reminds me of a very specific scenario, actually.
What's that? It's like speed reading a beautifully written novel is like taking a glass of highly complex vintage fine wine.
Okay.
And just chugging it as fast as you can, solely so you can brag to your friends that you drank it.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Right. Technically, you consume the liquid, but you entirely missed the point of the wine. You missed the aroma, the finish, the entire sensory experience.
What's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism behind that trend.
How so?
Well, in a productivity-obsessed culture, our brains are trained to treat books like corporate checkboxes.
Oh, absolutely. Done next, done next.
Right. We just want to extract the central thesis statement and move immediately to the next task. But the source argues that true literature requires what they call a degustação profunda.
A D's tasting.
A deep tasting, yes. It is meant to be a slow, highly immersive, deliberate process.
Taking your time with the English or Portuguese or whatever language it's in. Yeah. Just really slowing it down.
Exactly. When you read a quality text at the proper, relaxed pace, it allows the cognitive space necessary to feel like you are conversing with the author, sitting right beside them, absorbing their wisdom.
But, I mean, that raises a very real modern dilemma. Let's look at the difference between just knowing a story and actually experiencing it.
Right.
The source uses a specific example here. It's a classic Brazilian novel from 1844 called A Moreninha.
Written by Joaquim Manuel de Macedo, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And the plot is fairly straightforward. It's about a medical student named Augusto who goes to stay at his friend Felipe's house for a holiday.
Okay.
He meets Felipe's sister, Carolina. Augusto falls madly in love with her, and within a few months, they marry and devote eternal love to each other.
So it's a romance.
Yeah. Now, if the goal is just to absorb the story, I can go online right now, read a quick Wikipedia summary of that exact plot, and know the ending in 30 seconds.
Sure.
So why on earth would I spend hours doing a deep tasting of the full novel?
Well, because literature is fundamentally not about data acquisition. Synthesizing the source's core philosophy here gives us a profound answer, which is that reading is about vivifying possibilities in the imagination.
Vivifying, that's a great word.
It is. It's not just about knowing what happened, it is about feeling how things happen.
I see.
When you read a summary of a Morinia, you are standing outside the house looking at a very flat architectural blueprint. You see the structure, but you feel nothing.
So reading the actual text is like walking inside the house and actually feeling the atmosphere.
Precisely. When you read slowly, you are placing yourself inside 1844 Rio de Janeiro.
Wow.
You experience the slow, agonizing, beautiful buildup of Augusto's realization that he is falling in love. You feel the pacing of the era.
You are living in it.
Yes.
Oh.
Only by paying close attention to the author's carefully chosen words and allowing your brain to actively render that world do you truly live the work. You don't just memorize a Morenina, you vivify it.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But if immersing yourself in a world is that cognitively rewarding, why do so many of us freeze up when handed a massive book?
The dread.
Yeah, the dread. The guide uses the term calamasso to describe those heavy, intimidating bricks of paper.
Those giant doorstops.
Exactly. Some people see a calamasso and experience a literal physiological stress response, like their palms sweat or they feel genuine anger just looking at the spine.
It is a visceral reaction. And the guide explains that this dread, this deep aversion to reading, often stems from actual neurological trauma associated with books during our formative years.
Really? Trauma?
Yeah, trauma from school.
Well, that makes a lot of sense when you think about how we are introduced to reading in school.
Oh, yeah, think about it.
We take children, place them in a highly judgmental classroom environment, and force them to read aloud without any preparation.
Popcorn reading. It's terrifying.
It is terrifying. The intense anxiety of stumbling over complex words, losing your place on the page, the fear of public embarrassment.
All of those stress hormones just flood the brain.
And the brain, being highly associative, wires that feeling of panic directly to the physical object of a book.
That public humiliation leaves a permanent cognitive scar.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Furthermore, the trauma often comes from being forced to start with the wrong book.
Like reading Shakespeare in middle school.
Right. Imagine handing a beginner reader a text that is centuries old, filled with archaic vocabulary and themes they simply cannot relate to.
Just gonna give up.
The cognitive load required just to parse the grammar is overwhelming. It makes the reader feel intellectually inadequate,
Which is terrible.
which naturally leads to them rejecting the act of reading altogether just to protect their self-esteem.
So what does this all mean? How do we rewire decades of that deeply ingrained book trauma?
Well, there is a way.
I was incredibly impressed by the practical solution the Stork offers, which they call reading physiotherapy.
I love that term.
It tracks perfectly with how neuroplasticity works. If you think about conventional physical therapy, say someone is recovering from a severe shoulder injury.
Right.
They do not walk into a gym on day one and try to bench press 200 pounds.
No, that would be a disaster.
Exactly. If they did, they would tear the muscle again and probably abandon fitness forever. They start with the lightest possible movements.
Yeah, they do basic mobility exercises.
With resistance bands to safely rebuild the tissue.
This raises an important question. How exactly do we safely build our intellectual capacities without triggering that deep-seated dread?
We use the literary resistance bands.
Exactly. The source suggests we must treat a traumatized reader's brain with the exact same rehabilitative care. You must start with simple, short, highly relatable texts.
And they provide a specific, progressive workout plan for the mind.
Walk us through it.
Okay, so step one, you start with short stories, or cantos. Narratives that are brief and manageable.
That makes sense.
These suggest works like Clarice Lispector's Restos at Carnaval or Lima Barreto's Homum que sabia javanese.
So you can just sit down and finish them in a single short session.
Exactly, and get that immediate sense of completion.
That sense of completion is critical. Finishing a text releases dopamine, the brain's reward chemical.
Oh.
So you are actively rewiring your neural pathways to associate reading with accomplishment and pleasure rather than inadequacy and anxiety.
That is brilliant.
That's it.
Okay, so once that baseline is established, you move to step two. You add just a little bit of weight to the intellectual bar by choosing something slightly more refined, perhaps a bit funny, to keep the engagement high.
Okay, what do they recommend for that?
The guide recommends Machado de Assis' O Alienista. It is relatively short, but the language is much richer and more sophisticated.
So you are building linguistic endurance, you are challenging your vocabulary, but because the story itself is highly entertaining and contained in length, the cognitive load remains safely manageable.
Right. And from there, you branch into step three, which is international classics, still keeping the page count low.
Like what?
Things like Oscar Wilde's The Canterville Ghost or Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Oh, classic. So you are getting accustomed to different cultural cadences.
Exactly. And then step four is where it really comes together. When you are finally ready to tackle longer, more expensive texts, the guide strongly suggests starting with familiar cinematic adaptations.
Books you already know well from movies.
Yes. Harry Potter, Sense and Sensibility, Around the World in 80 Days, or the Sherlock Holmes cases.
The psychology behind that final step is brilliant.
Why is that?
Well, world building requires a massive amount of mental energy. When you read a completely new fantasy or historical novel, your brain has to construct the architecture, the faces of the characters, the rules of the universe entirely from scratch.
It's exhausting.
It is. But by starting with a familiar movie adaptation, you already possess a visual anchor. You know what Hogwarts looks like. You know Holmes's silhouette.
So it does the heavy lifting for you.
Exactly. That drastically reduces the cognitive friction of the reading exercise. By bypassing the heavy lifting of spatial rendering, the reader is free to just enjoy the rhythm of the language and the pacing of the plot.
I love that. And perhaps the most liberating part of this entire reading physiotherapy framework is the ultimate permission the source grants the reader.
Which is?
If you start a book and you find it tedious or too difficult, just abandon it.
Oh, absolutely. There is zero shame in putting a book back on the shelf.
None at all.
Yeah.
If the weight on the bar is too heavy for your current fitness level or the workout is just boring, drop it.
Right.
Forcing yourself to push through a book you hate is exactly how you re-injure your reading muscle. You just pivot and find a book that fits your current interests.
The overarching goal of the physiotherapy is not to conquer a specific piece of literature to prove your intelligence.
No.
The goal is to rehabilitate your ability to enjoy the immersive experience of reading.
Yes. Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Once the reader is fully rehabilitated, once they are no longer terrified of the calamasso, what is the ultimate payoff?
The real reward.
Exactly. The guide argues that it is the realization of the absolute magic of words, the aesthetic composition. And the source provides some stunning quotes to prove how written language can paint pictures that multi-million-dollar movies simply cannot replicate.
Because a movie hands you the audio and the visual in a passive state. It is a completely completed rendering.
Exactly. You don't have to do any work. But look at how the author Jose de Alencar describes the protagonist in his classic work, Irzima.
Okay.
He doesn't just say she is beautiful. He describes her as having lips of honey, hair blacker than the wing of the grona, which is a local blackbird, and a smile sweeter than the Jati honeycomb.
Wow.
He says her breath is like vanilla in the woods.
That is so evocative.
Right. When you read that, your brain is forced to actively construct the scene. You have to intellectually manufacture the specific dark scent of vanilla in a dense forest.
Right. You have to reach into your own memory for that scent.
You have to recall the texture of a honeycomb. Your brain becomes an active rendering engine.
The reader becomes a vital co-creator with the author. The words are just the source code, but your imagination is the hardware running the simulation.
That's a great way to put it.
Let's look at another striking example from the text. Essida Quiros, in his novel O Ateno, describes a sunset.
Okay.
He doesn't just say the sun went down behind the mountains. He calls it a melancholy of dying light, where the distant mountains take on the purple tone of crushed violets.
The purple tone of crushed violets. That is profoundly tactile.
It really is.
You don't just see the color purple on a screen. The word crushed forces you to imagine the physical texture of the flower petals breaking apart.
Yes.
You feel the fragility of that dying light. It demands a level of sensory engagement that television never asks of you.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this aesthetic composition goes far beyond just painting pretty mental landscapes.
Where does it lead?
The source identifies a much deeper, more fundamental value to this active cognitive rendering: empathy.
Empathy. So how does translating aesthetic descriptions into mental images actually make us more empathetic?
Well, think about the mechanism we just described. You are practicing the skill of simulating sensations and emotions that are not your own.
Okay.
When a writer uses that intense level of aesthetic care to describe a trivial sunset or the scent of vanilla, imagine what happens when they apply that same linguistic power to human suffering.
Oh, wow.
The source points to Victor Hugo's towering masterpiece, Les Miserables.
A classic Calamasso.
Absolutely. Hugo writes about a point in society where the unhappy and the infamous mix into one fatal word: miserables. He describes poverty and misery as a ditch society throws lost souls into.
A ditch society throws lost souls into. That is a heavy, suffocating image.
It is. And when you read about dramatic, unjust suffering described with such potent, carefully constructed language, you are not passively observing a new statistic about poverty.
No, you're in the ditch.
You are actively simulating the crushing claustrophobic weight of that ditch in your own mind. You are simulating the despair of the lost souls.
That gives me chills.
That cognitive simulation awakens something deep within the reader. It awakens active compassion. It awakens charity.
Because you felt it.
Exactly. Reading exercises the neurological muscle of empathy because it forces you to spend hours living inside the internal architecture of someone else's pain and joy.
And the beauty of this is that it doesn't just apply to grounded historical realism like Victor Hugo.
Oh, not at all.
The source astutely points out that even when we are reading wildly fictional stories, like futuristic sci-fi epics or interdimensional fantasy adventures, we are still gaining immense practical value.
Because even the most wildly fantastical stories are fundamentally grounded in real human psychology,
Exactly.
real historical data, and active cultural dynamics. A story about alien factions negotiating a treaty in deep space is still, at its core, a story about diplomacy, human nature, and conflict resolution.
You are constantly absorbing new ways to articulate the human experience. You're expanding your vocabulary and encountering complex moral dilemmas.
It awakens a sense of mystery and creativity that permanently expands how you view your everyday terrestrial life.
It really is a powerful masterclass in why we need to intentionally slow down, step away from the endless feed of information and return to the printed page.
To do that deep tasting.
Yes, the deep tasting. There are infinite pathways to finding genuine happiness and profound empathy through literature, as long as you find the right book, pace your consumption, and allow your imagination to do the heavy lifting.
You just have to be willing to start the physiotherapy and rebuild that muscle.
Well said.
And that leaves us with a truly fascinating question to ponder as we wrap up.
What's it?
If the aesthetic composition of literature forces our minds to actively construct realities and feel profound empathy by simulating the experiences of others, how might our brains literally be rewiring themselves differently when we read a beautifully crafted sentence compared to when we passively watch a hyper-realistic scene on a screen?
That is definitely something to think about the next time you feel the urge to endlessly scroll on your phone instead of picking up a novel. By the way, leave a comment on this video, as well as your reading suggestions for our friends. Which book have you enjoyed the most so far? Which book are you currently reading? Okay, that's all for now. Thank you for joining us in this podcast, and until our next episode.